Hi, and thank you for watching Super Pinoy on UpNat TV Channel 36. This is your Kuya Romy, and you're watching Tuesdays with Kuya Romy. Last week, we had a conversation with Leigh Auton, who chairs the establishment unit of the light rail system in Auckland. And he's here with us, and he's going to share with us more details than what he mentioned in our broadcast last week. So, Leigh.
So, Romy, we talked about, getting the views of the community into this program. We have a range of ways of doing that and what we're offering the community. There is a process with conversations with mana whenua. So I'm personally going around meeting at least 15 iwi leaders around the community because of their significant role in terms of the treaty, in terms of what that looks like. And if you think of Māori, think intergenerationally, so 50 years I referred to before. So what does the city look like, and what is Māori participation in that process, the urban form? Big opportunity. So that's a really exciting process, and I'm excited about what that could look like in terms of mana whenua involvement and participation in this long-term project. Then there's a sort of another layer. We are talking with business communities, business associations, schools, etc., on the way through, and getting their voices. So it's very, focused on their needs and issues. And then there's the wider interests of the community at large, and how do they participate in it. So we, for example, just had successful events at the markets. The wonderful Otara, the wonderful Mangere, and the wonderful Mangere Bridge markets, which, as you know, are pretty vibrant and attract an awful lot of people into those. So
what do you do in markets? Do you just distribute flyers, maybe?
We have brochures. We have people there. We have people can come and talk to them. Yeah. So we encourage, and we'll be there. We have been there and visible around that. We have a series of focused groups. For example, the people with disabilities, and lots of people, including me as I age. We want to hear those voices. How do you design your city for people with disabilities? Most of whom, most of us at some stage have some disability. How do you interact, for example, with infrastructure like light rail, and how do you design the city around your stations and all those sorts of things. We've got a big event coming up with All Blacks versus Australia, the Test match at Eden Park on I think it's the 7th of August.
Oh, so you're going to be there?
Yeah, so we'll be there. We'll be handing out brochures and trying to get feedback. Again highlighting what we're doing. Again, getting that voice. There are forms to be filled out. People can come back. They can interact with our website, etc. Give their views, etc. Yeah. But yeah, we're at the test match.
Yeah. And what we will be doing is you'll be seeing a schedule of events.
Yeah, you go on
the
website, and you'll find that, and all those brochures. We've actually distributed 60, 70 odd thousand brochures along the route. So again, those people most affected immediately. We're saying, hey, we need to hear your voice. So we're doing. I think we've got things on the back of buses, and highlighting the fact that there is a conversation, a korero, that needs to take place, or we want it to take place. It's your city, it's our city, so let's all participate in it. That's what's really exciting.
Okay, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, more about how you can participate in this planning for the light rail in Auckland.
Every 5 minutes, that's super convenient. With the prices of petrol, it's pretty hard, for average family, working family.
That'll help me get to uni more quickly. It's hard to get around, especially if you don't have enough income to buy a car.
There's never been a railroad in Mangere where all the islanders and Pacific and Polynesian people come to. This is a big change for everybody, and it's nice and efficient.
And the ones that are in wheelchairs like myself would love it. It'll get us from here to Airihanga.
I would like to use the light rail to go to school, see my family.
Bring it on and bring it in.
Thank you so much for staying with us. We're back. This is Kuya Romy on Tuesdays with Kuya Romy, and back with Leigh Auton. Leigh, before the break, we started talking about some of the finer details, but at this moment, I'd like you to talk more about how our viewers can interact with your team, and maybe give them a picture of what is going to happen before November, and then after you have given your report in November, what's going to happen next, because I think it's important that our viewers see what you are doing now and how it's going to impact on other projects moving forward after November.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Romy. We, as we've discussed, we certainly want that interaction and that participation. So there's various vehicles to do that. We have brochures and we distribute a lot, which you can fill out the form and then you send it back into the project team. There's 0800 number. There's our website that you can access, forms and fill them in, etc., etc. We are producing brochures and information in 7 different languages. So clearly today Māori is really critical, but for Indian audiences, for Korean, for Chinese, Mandarin, we've prepared 7. There's Tongan, Samoan. It's all our literature's been translated into those different languages. So there's a range of mechanisms that you can interface into this program.
Yeah. And apart from them giving personal feedback, they can also join some of the events that you're organizing. How many more public events have you got?
There's quite a number, and Romy will provide you with those events, which if you have an opportunity to actually provide for your listeners, that would be really appreciated. So we can give you that information. But yes, there's a range of different types of events that are going to occur up until sometime in September. You asked me the question about going forward, and it's quite important for viewers to understand that this is sort of the first part of a process. It's the establishment unit. So let's assume the government, central government cabinet, accept our recommendations. They might ask a few more questions, but assuming they do, the expectation and requirement on us is to provide as part of that report what stage 2 looks like in terms of a delivery entity. Now, the delivery entity will be doing a lot more consultation with the community, because it'll get down into details of how it affects your community, where the stations are going to be. So, for example, if the recommendation was to choose Sandringham Road or to go via the Māngere town centre, how does it impact on those communities? How does it impact on residents? And there'll be a lot of detail. You can imagine, for example, if we chose, the government chose on our recommendation light rail, a tram, and it was on the surface along Sandringham Road, that'll impact on those residents. It might be cut and cover. That would have a different effect. So again, that issue of impact and how we deal with community dislocation, that will be a second part, but really important part, as we know. And we know that from overseas. There's about 160 odd current light rail projects around the world at the moment, some a huge number anyway. And each of those, we learn from those. Each of them, and people go to Sydney, I think there's light rail there. It's been controversial in terms of that dislocation. We've got Gold Coast, for example, which has gone probably a little bit better, but there's different forms of rail. There'll be different forms of, whether it sits on the surface, whether it's below ground, as I mentioned.
Yeah. So, focusing now on what you need to deliver to cabinet before November.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you want the community to participate in? It appears to me that you've got all the expertise that you need.
Yeah.
You've got things written down, distributed to the communities. Is there any particular input that you're looking
There
for?
is, and you just, I mentioned Mangere Town Centre, for example. Previous proposals, those that were public, bypassed the town centre. We're saying there's an option that rather than go straight to the airport from Mangere Bridge, you would go via the town centre, which makes sense in terms of that key link between Mangere and the airport. It's really interesting. Our current public bus system, which is really good, and Auckland Transport done a great job. But it's actually quite difficult for people of Mangere, for Vona to actually have a quick trip to the airport, and yet the airport is this huge industrial employment zone, and lots of people, Mangere, lots of people of Roskilde work there, so we want to hear those voices of the workers, of the residents, do we want to go through Mangere Town Centre, or do we bypass it? I suspect I know the answer to that, and probably you do too as well, but so we want to hear those options. We want to hear from people in Mount Roskilde, is that link to the airport, and I suspect again it is, it's really important for the people in Mount Roskilde to have good, easy access to the airport. There'll be issues around Mangere going across another bridge, across Mangere.
Yeah.
Lots of issues, Romy.
Yeah, and I think it will depend on the type of user. If the user is a traveler, he may not be interested. But for somebody who works in the airport, for example, and lives somewhere in the city, that would be something that he will really, really consider.
Absolutely. Yeah. People, different spaces, different places,
Yeah,
are we?
and that's what we're trying to
We have
balance.
different needs, and so what we are designing, working with the community on is this is not just a fast movement from the CBD to the airport. That's not what it's about. This is about linking communities. This is about linking individuals in those communities to their needs, whether it's education, a student from Mangere to get to the University of Auckland. We know there's quite a large number that do. The resident of Mount Roskilde that works down at the airport, their needs, what are their needs, what is their expectation of what this experience would look like, and again we're designing an experience which is a good one,
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we have to end our conversation here, so thank you very much, Leigh. But before we do that, I'd give you an opportunity to address our viewers and say a few words before we close our segment.
Thank you, Romy, and thanks for the opportunity of talking to your viewers. Really appreciate if you can participate, and we do want to hear your voices. It's really important. It's really interesting, and particularly the newer migrant communities that are in New Zealand. They're actually more used to public transport, whether it's heavy rail or bus and whatever, because you come from communities often that have that, So unlike sort of older Kiwis who used to the car, more used to public transport, and that's what's really exciting, and it's actually what's regenerating public transport in our city. As a traveller commuter on the Southern Line, it's full of the diversity of the world's population, and that's really exciting because they're using public transport rather than maybe driving a car.
So thank you very much, Leigh, and thank you so much for watching us. This is Kuya Romy on Tuesdays with Kuya Romy on Super Pinoy on Apna TV channel 36. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.
Every 5 minutes, that's super convenient.
With the prices of petrol, it's pretty hard, for average family, working family.
That'll help me get to uni more quickly. It's hard to get around, especially if you don't have enough income to buy a car.
There's never been a railroad in Mangere where all the islanders and Pacific and Polynesian people come to. This is a big change for everybody, and it's nice and efficient.
And the ones that are in wheelchairs like myself would love it. It'll get us from here to Airihanga.
I would like to use the light rail to go to school, see my family.
Bring it on and bring it in.
Kayo po'y nanonood sa Super Pinoy at narito ang kwento ng VOA News.
Hi, I'm Sam Merritt. I'm captain and team leader of the schooner Apollonia, which is the wonderful ship we're all aboard right now. The Apollonia is a schooner, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a sailboat which has more than one mast. And we sail freight and cargo throughout the Hudson Valley from our home port right back here in Hudson, New York, all the way down to New York City.
All right, everyone ready on their lifts? Yep. All right, go ahead and pull away both lifts.
Using the wind to transport things sustainably, but with the purpose of weaving together all of these amazing producers throughout the Hudson Valley. So we're connecting people who make maple syrup right here, people who make hot sauce right here with consumers down in New York City. And then we're even flipping things around. And when we turn around, we're sailing up cargoes like coffee and things like that that you can't really grow around here. Our primary cargoes on the Apollonia are brewer's malt, oak logs for mushroom cultivation, bulk flour that was grown and milled right here in the Hudson Valley, and other grains. And those are what we consider the bulk cargoes or the large cargoes. We also have individual cargoes. We work with small scale producers delivering everything from honey to maple syrup to hot sauce. The Apollonia is an old boat. She actually turned 75 this year. She's from 1946. That's the Hudson Athens Lighthouse. That's from 1874. And it's a fascinating little spot. But yeah, that is up until the 1940s. There was actually a family that lived there that had to keep a lamp oil fire burning as the only means of navigation there. Now the Coast Guard runs it with a little solar panel, and it's kind of a much simpler ordeal. Matt, let's see if we can get a little speed up and then we'll tack. The Hudson River is an amazing body of water. It presents all of the challenges of sailing anywhere that I've ever sailed. In some ways it's more challenging because it tends to be quite skinny. There's lots of commercial traffic. There's lots of shallow water, things like that. The wind is always changing and always fighting with you. But what's amazing about the Hudson River is the people that it connects. I think that's what really makes it work for me, is that we're constantly sailing past towns and people, and we're interacting with them, right? We see our jobs very much as delivering cargo and also connecting people, whether that's a producer to a consumer, or whether that's just someone who lives in Hudson with the whereabouts of something cool that just happened in Kingston. That's what ships were historically, is they were messengers not only of cargo and freight, but also of news and weather, and you'd send something to a friend in another town. And so I think as we're trying to encourage folks to think about how the Hudson River is a way to move things, understanding the connection is really important.
This is definitely a new thing at the same time because it's just started within the last year to make these runs from Hudson, New York, down the Hudson River to here in Brooklyn, New York, and really connecting a lot of different towns and communities along the way, and showing people that there's a way forward on sustainable freight and cargo.
Sail freight has been something people have done for thousands of years, 150, 200 years ago in the Hudson Valley. Most of what was moved by sloops and schooners like this on the Hudson River. And of course today there's this crisis we're having with the climate, and we're looking for some solutions. And I feel inspired by the past and feel like this is still a realistic solution. So the concept is to try it out and see how it goes. We are looking to the past, but not in some like, living history kind of museum way, just in what were practical solutions, like horses, total renewable energy. The wind obviously still exists. The Hudson River, still a resource that's here. Once it was the superhighway of the region, maybe it has utility as such again.
Today I came down to pick up some honey and some cider that I ordered on the Apollonia.
So Lou right here is riding this is our standard distribution rig right here, and you can just take off whenever you want. It is a Tern e-bike equipped with a Carla trailer. In the trailer's 400 pounds of malt from Upstate Farms, and Lou's about to ride it for distribution. In addition to that, what we've got today is some friends came out with a team of horses. I mean, this is kind of, we've got, in some ways, a reappropriation of 18th century technology to be the green version of the future, and horses are obviously a renewable solution. The next load is going to Van Brunt, which is the closest delivery, so that should be nice. Nice refreshing load after last time.
Last one was a long load.
Yeah, totally. This one's right around the corner, and it's the rye, which is the unmarked bags. Same stuff we got you. So yeah, and he's using that to make a white rye whiskey. So it should be good, hopefully. Yeah. Actually, we'll be ready by this fall, so when we do this again in the fall, you can taste some of the products of our labor. And on the way up, we're going to bring whiskey from Van Brunt Whiskey, and we're going to bring a bunch of mead from Enlightenment Wines. We're also rendezvousing with a French ship that sailed wine and chocolate over across the Atlantic Ocean on Monday. So we're going to have some wine and chocolate in our northbound cargo. And there's probably something else I'm forgetting, but that's it's been a long trip. Been underway for about a week now, so yeah, we're just trying to get the boat unloaded and things squared away.
Hoist up the John D. sails, see how the mainsail sets.
You have to understand that the people we work with are very passionate about what they're making and very thoughtful about that. And they've thought about the taste, they've thought about the impact, they've thought about the producers. The idea of supporting local farms to a lot of these people is common practice, right? And the idea of organic produce and fair trade and how the labor is treated. And they're really trying to make the best product, and that's not just flavor, that's also story and impact. And then I think by and large, they all take the trucking part for granted, right? You build it, you need to get it to someone, you make it, you need to get it to someone, what do? You throw it on a truck. That sort of is how our distribution network is set up. And so when we approached them with the idea that there was an alternative, I think at first they sort of didn't really believe us, and then we've been sort of demonstrating that that's the case, and building a network of people who have faith in us.
There's a lot of people who try and do something like this. I mean, when he got this boat, it was just bare bones. There wasn't no masts, no booms, and in just a couple years, he put it all together. If it wasn't for his just like amazing like drive and energy, it would never ever been able to take place.
Said I feel so broken
For us, part of this is that sailing and many of the sort of traditional crafts, you can't preserve them in books. I mean, you can write amazing stories about sailing, obviously, and you can write down the goods, but the truth is, if you don't do it, you'll never really know how to do it, right? There's an experiential side to it. And so to some degree, engaging with people, getting them on boats, getting crew sailing again, keeping this like wisdom alive is the only way it's gonna persist, right?
When people hear we're delivering by sail, they're at first confused and just like, no way. Like, no, really? No fossil fuels? Yeah, none. And interesting, and then their second question is, well, do the numbers add up? It's like, well, that's the point. That's what we're working on. And I think when we explain what we're doing, I think people overwhelmingly just understand that, you know, the system that we have working now just does, well, it's not working. The system that's in place right now is not working, and it's not sustainable. And it's just the power structure, trade structure, everything. It's not sustainable. It's good for now. It's good for maybe 10 years, but it's not going to be good in 50 years, and it's sure as hell not good for our grandchildren. So there's got to be a way to change things. And this is a small attempt, and it's, you know, a test case, but it gets the conversation started, so that's the point.
An emergency vaccination drive in the Democratic Republic of Congo after a measles outbreak in 2020. Efforts like this have saved millions of lives, says a study. Researchers looked at vaccination programs over the past 2 decades, targeting 10 infectious diseases across 112 low and middle income countries. They found that some 50 million lives, mostly those of children, had been saved by vaccines. They included diseases such as measles, hepatitis B, human papillomavirus or HPV, and yellow fever. The research was led by the Vaccine Impact Modelling Consortium, funded by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
If we continued with the vaccinations in our projections, so beyond 2019, we'd avert another 47 million deaths. So huge numbers. And really what we wanted to kind of show in this paper is this is what we projected vaccination to look like before the COVID pandemic, and wanted to emphasize, you know, these long-term effects, these long-term benefits of vaccination going into the future.
Immunisation programmes have added benefits beyond the prevention of specific diseases.
For example, if people aren't getting sick of vaccine preventable diseases, then that means there's less stress on healthcare due to those infections, which means you could potentially be treating people for other things.
But the researchers warn that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted vaccination programmes and could lead to a decline in coverage.
We've got not only healthcare services stretched by possibly treating people infected with COVID, we've also got people's personal choice. You know, they might put off going to seek an immunisation just because of fears surrounding being infected with COVID.
The World Health Organization in April launched its Immunisation Agenda 2030 to try to get vaccine programs back on track and reach even more people.
It would mean reducing by half the children who are completely left out of essential vaccines, the zero-dose children. It would mean achieving another 500 introductions of new and underused vaccines in low and middle income countries.
Scientists say the huge number of lives saved demonstrates the stunning advances of modern medicine and the importance of keeping other vaccine programs on track despite the COVID pandemic. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.